So this article, especially from international relations, is somewhat important, and from political science and international, it is even more important because this article is especially written by Vijay Gokhale. He used to be our external affairs foreign secretary. Okay, so that is why his view also is a kind of uh, major government's view. So try to read this. Basically, what he tried to suggest is he explained this entire issue of US China trade war in a form of a beautiful structure, like through historical framework and all. So initially, first he gave the context, like what is going on at the present, like how US and China are seeing each other eye to eye, and then you can see in the history from 1900s he started, and then slowly in the period of Mao Zedong, and then he explained US approach first, taking a presidential route, like how every president of US has reacted with respect to China. And then finally he said US has believed in positive objectives, and does it help? But actually China was disguising its real purpose. That means it is hiding its real purpose and getting the benefits out of this cooperation from US. And he told how it was doing that entire thing. And meanwhile, in between, there were some of the important statements here, like how China is building its dominance. That is through alternate trading system. That is Belt and Road Initiative, and then Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and then having its own GPS system. I told you like Beidou, and then having their own technology platforms like digital platforms. All this, okay. And finally, he talked here somewhere about scientist John Mears Heimer as well. It is not relevant for general study students, but for PSIR students, he is a realist. You don't need to get afraid. Okay, realist is a kind of school. You will read it in PSIR when you go through it. So he quoted him, and he told how actually he predicted everything, whatever is happening now before itself. And then finally, he posed a question for us, like whether India will be able to, you know, maintain its strategic autonomy or not when there are two again and again, even if you don't get the content for the first time. Okay. So coming back, there is another interesting development in international relations. Uh, I remember we discussed yesterday also that there was an summit between India and Australia, kind of first virtual summit. So there are certain kind of documents that were signed. So I'll just give a brief overview in 2 minutes so that it will be useful from prelims and mains point also. So you can see here there is a joint statement on comprehensive strategic partnership between India and Australia. This is announced. And second important thing is maritime cooperation. And then you have here mutual logistics support, MLSA. Okay, this is also important because I told part of India US and part of India Japan, that we have this kind of logistics exchange agreements. That means our bases can be used by services of other countries. That is, Indian Navy can use Australia's bases, and Australian Navy can use Indian bases. So that way we can extend our operations. So this is also something that is signed between India and Australia. And I remember just now somebody was asking to explain difference between strategic partnership and comprehensive strategic partnership. So the word comprehensive itself explains. So when comprehensive used, that means this partnership, whatever the strategic partnership is there, that is extended to all the fields. That is, it includes 360 degrees of relationship. Usually, strategic partnership deals with defense, political, and economic aspects. But when we say comprehensive, it also deals with environment, even education, healthcare, social relations, people to people. So when all these aspects are covered, it is called comprehensive strategic partnership. So with Australia earlier, we used to have strategic partnership, and now it is converted to comprehensive strategic partnership. So I can give you that also here. So you can see here what are the headings that are there under comprehensive strategic partnership. And meanwhile, you can read everything of this in Ministry of External Affairs also. So you can see here in comprehensive, you see here science and technology and research collaboration is one field, and then you have defense cooperation, and similarly maritime cooperation, and then regional and multilateral cooperation, terrorism, economic cooperation, innovation and entrepreneurship, agriculture cooperation, education, culture and tourism. So you see here almost there are how many fields? 13, 13 sectors. I mean, leave the implementation, even then 12 different sectors are covered. So that is why it is called comprehensive strategic cooperation. So this is something. And also we are trying to get more cooperation in latest technologies like cyber and cyber enabled critical technology also. Just try to go through this so that even if you don't remember or note it down, just you will get a context like how our relation is improving with respect to our neighbors, and especially with Australia it is bit important as well. So here we'll stop here this thing, and we'll go back to our international relations topic. I guess yesterday we have almost completed it, but there were 3 or 4 points that were missed. So I'll just discuss them, and then I'll explain that summary in Telugu, and then we'll complete that India-Japan relations. Okay. Yes. So yesterday we discussed first historical aspect, and then every aspect of India-Japan relations, and also we discussed challenges like what are the current issues which we have to overcome, and then we discussed this suggestions or way forward kind of thing. So part of this, I said right now whatever the defense arrangements that are there between India and Japan are right now not effective or not giving time bound results. So that is why this word languishing is used. So languishing is also means that that is the defense relationship is very slow. So that needs to be given a push so that those agreements, like example I told, there is an amphibious aircraft. So that discussions were like going on from around 4 to 5 years. So that needs to be speeded up. So that is first thing. Next thing, we discussed in economic relations aspect that there are certain complementarities, like Japan has excess pension funds and India has the demand, and similarly Japan has aging population, India has demographic dividend. So what we can do is we can synchronize our plans, like whatever plans we have. For example, India has given some plans like Make in India, Digital India, and even other plans also, like in this what we say in the space sector also. So similarly, Japan has certain development plans. So because of this complementarities, we can actually synchronize those plans and use those strengths more effectively. So like for example, right now Japan is planning to uh, pull the companies from China. It wants to shift those companies from China. So you can synchronize Japan's move with India's made in India. So what is India doing? India is offering incentives. India is offering single window clearances, ease of doing business under made in India. So you can synchronize made in India with the plan of Japan to move companies out of China. So if you both synchronize that, we can actually get that companies from China to India. So that way both India and Japan can benefit. So this is kind of another suggestion. And one of the other important issue is I told like Asia Africa growth corridor is a connectivity project that is visualized between India and Japan, but still it is in talks or still it is in planning stage. No important project is realized. So we can actually push those connectivity projects into real time. We can keep some deadlines and we have to complete it in faster pace. Then only we'll be able to actually achieve our objectives of free and open Indo-Pacific Ocean. So these are the kind of suggestions for that. Okay. So that is it with India-Japan relations. I'll just give a brief summary of both of these challenges and way forward in Telugu. సో యా మనం అనుకున్నట్టు ఇండియా డిఫెన్స్ రిలేషన్స్ లో మనం వేరియస్ ఆస్పెక్ట్ చూసాము, లైక్ హిస్టారికల్ యాంగిల్, తర్వాత ఎకనామిక్, డిఫెన్స్, స్ట్రాటజిక్ అన్ని. సో అలాగే ఇవన్నీ పాజిటివ్ టెరెన్ లో చూసాం, కానీ ఇష్యూస్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి అన్నమాట ఇండియా జపాన్ మధ్యలో. ఆ ఇష్యూస్ ఏంటి అంటే మేజర్ గా మనము జపాన్ తోని 2011లో ఫ్రీ ట్రేడ్ అగ్రిమెంట్ చేసుకున్నాం. దాని పేరే సెపా, కాంప్రహెన్సివ్ ఎకనామిక్ పార్ట్నర్షిప్ అగ్రిమెంట్. ఆ అగ్రిమెంట్ చేసుకున్న తర్వాత ట్రేడ్ లెవెల్ అయితే పెరిగింది, కానీ అది ఇండియాకి ఫేవర్ గా పెరగలేదు. అంటే ఇండియా ట్రేడ్ డెఫిసిట్ అనేది పెరిగింది జపాన్ తో. సో అందుకని ఈ ఇష్యూ సాల్వ్ చేయకపోతే ఫ్యూచర్ లో ఈ ట్రేడ్ డెఫిసిట్ ఇంకా పెరుగుతుంది. సో అప్పుడు ఇండియాకి జపాన్ కి రిలేషన్స్ లో ఒక ఇరిటెంట్ లాగా తయారవుతుంది. సో వీ హ్యావ్ టు అడ్రస్ దాట్. అండ్ నాట్ ఓన్లీ దాట్, వై నాట్ మెనీ జపనీస్ కంపెనీస్ చాలా ఎందుకు ఇండియాలో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేయట్లేదంటే కొన్ని ఇష్యూస్ ఉన్నాయి ఇండియాలో కూడా. అవేంటి అంటే ఇండియాలో చాలా కాంప్లెక్స్ రెగ్యులేషన్స్ ఉన్నాయి ఇప్పటికీ కూడా, లైక్ లేబర్ లాస్ లో కానీ ల్యాండ్ లాస్ లో కానీ. ఇది మీరు ఎకనమీలో కూడా చదువుతుంటారు. సో ఒక ఫారెన్ కంపెనీ పెట్టాలంటే ఇట్ హ్యాస్ టు గో త్రూ మల్టిపుల్ ప్రాసెస్, అండ్ వాళ్ళ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ వర్క్ ప్రాసెస్ డిఫరెంట్ ఉంటుంది, ఇండియాలో డిఫరెంట్ ఉంటుంది. సో అందుకని చాలా ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ వస్తున్నాయి. సో దానివల్ల కూడా ఇన్వెస్ట్మెంట్స్ రియలైజ్ అవ్వట్లేదు. దీనికి మెయిన్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇప్పుడు మన బుల్లెట్ ట్రైన్ ప్రాజెక్ట్ ఉంది. ఆల్మోస్ట్ 2016 లో దాన్ని ప్రపోజ్ చేశారు, అండ్ ఇట్ హ్యాస్ టు కంప్లీట్ బై 2022-23. బట్ ఈవెన్ ఇప్పటికి కూడా ల్యాండ్ అక్విజిషన్ కంప్లీట్ కాలేదు. ఇంకా కూడా ల్యాండ్ అక్విజిషన్ లో చాలా ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఫార్మర్స్ ప్రొటెస్ట్ చేస్తున్నారు. అలాగే ఆ కారిడార్, హై స్పీడ్ రైల్ ప్రాజెక్ట్ ఒక ముంబైలో నేషనల్ పార్క్ నుండి వెళ్తుంది. సో అక్కడ ఎకలాజికల్ క్లియరెన్సెస్ రావట్లేదు. సో ఇలా ప్రొటెస్ట్ వల్ల ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ అన్ని డిలే అవుతున్నాయి. సో దీనివల్ల ఏమవుతుంది, ఇది నెగటివ్ ఎఫెక్ట్ అవుతుంది ఫ్యూచర్ ఇన్వెస్ట్మెంట్స్ మీద లేదా అదర్ ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ మీద. ఇది ఒక్క హై స్పీడ్ రైల్ ప్రాజెక్ట్ కే కాదు, ఈవెన్ ఇండస్ట్రియల్ కారిడార్స్ లైక్ మనం చెప్పుకున్నట్టు ఢిల్లీ ముంబై ఇండస్ట్రియల్ కారిడార్ కానీ, చెన్నై బెంగళూరు ఇండస్ట్రియల్ కారిడార్ కానీ, వీటిలో కూడా సిమిలర్ గా ఇవే ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ ఉన్నాయి. సో ఇవన్నీ స్లోగా ఇష్యూస్ లాగా, ఛాలెంజెస్ లాగా ఉన్నాయి అనమాట ఇండియా జపాన్, విచ్ వీ హ్యావ్ టు అడ్రస్. అలాగే మనము ఇండియా జపాన్ ఎంగేజ్మెంట్ చూస్తే పొలిటికల్ రిలేషన్స్ లో ఏం చెప్పాను నేను, ఇండియా జపానే కాకుండా ఇండియా జపాన్ ఆస్ట్రేలియాతో కానీ, ఇండియా జపాన్ ఆస్ట్రేలియా ప్లస్ యుఎస్ కలిపి క్వాడ్ గా ఫామ్ చేసి వర్క్ చేస్తున్నాయి అని చెప్పి. వీటన్నిటిలో యుఎస్ ది మెయిన్ షేర్. కానీ యుఎస్ చూస్తే అన్ప్రెడిక్టబుల్ గా తయారైంది. ఒక రోజు ఒక పాలసీ తీసుకుంటుంది, ఇంకో రోజు ఇంకో పాలసీగా తీసుకుంటుంది ట్రంప్ లీడర్షిప్ లో. సో అన్సర్టనిటీ వల్ల మనకు ఆ అన్సర్టనిటీ ఒకటి, ఆల్రెడీ మన మూవ్మెంట్ కూడా ఈ ఏషియా ఆఫ్రికా గ్రోత్ కారిడార్ లో ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ ఏవి కూడా మనం రియలైజ్ అవ్వలేకపోతున్నాం అనమాట. సో ఇవి కూడా ఛాలెంజ్ లాగా మారినాయి. అంటే డ్రీమ్స్ పెద్దగా ఉన్నాయి, బట్ అచీవ్మెంట్స్ అనేవి చాలా తక్కువ ఉన్నాయి. సో అది ప్రాబ్లం ఇంకొకటి. అండ్ నెక్స్ట్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ థింగ్, జపాన్ even though has some problems or strategic concern with China, Japan has hugely invested in China అన్నమాట. అంటే జపనీస్ కంపెనీస్ చైనాలో ఎన్ని ఉన్నాయో అవి జపనీస్ కంపెనీస్ ఇండియాలో కన్నా చైనాలో సమ్ 300 times ఎక్కువ ఉన్నాయి కంపెనీస్. ఇన్వెస్ట్మెంట్ కూడా చాలా హెవీగా ఉంది. ఒకటి నైబర్స్ కాబట్టి, ఇంకోటి మార్కెట్ కూడా చైనా చాలా పెద్దది. సో ఇలా డిపెండెన్సీ ఉంది. సో రేపు పొద్దున ఏదైనా ఇష్యూ మీద టఫ్ స్టాండ్ తీసుకోవాల్సి వస్తే జపాన్ తీసుకోగలుగుతుందా లేదా అనేది కూడా ఒక ఛాలెంజ్ అనమాట ఇండియాకి. సిమిలర్ గా ఇండియా కూడా అంతే. రేపు పొద్దున చైనాకి ఇద్దరు కలిసి కోఆపరేట్ చేయడానికి లిమిట్ అనేది, టాప్ లిమిట్ ఏంటిది అనేది కూడా ఒక ఛాలెంజ్ అనమాట. సో ఇదొకటి. సిమిలర్ గా మనం చూస్తే మీకు చెప్పాను, జపాన్ కొంచెం డిఫెన్స్ లో కానీ, ఆ తర్వాత న్యూక్లియర్ ఇష్యూస్ మీద కానీ చాలా సెన్సిటివ్ ఉంది. సో జపాన్ టెక్నాలజీ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ లో కూడా చాలా సెన్సిటివ్ అనమాట. అందుకని ఇప్పటి వరకు ఎన్నో టెక్నాలజీ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్స్ అనుకున్నా కూడా అవన్నీ రియలైజ్ అవ్వలేదు. సో ఫ్యూచర్ లో కూడా మరి కో ప్రొడక్షన్ కి లేదా ఇండియా జపాన్ కలిసి కొత్త ప్లాట్ఫామ్స్ డిజైన్ చేయడంలో కానీ అంతే కోఆపరేషన్ మనం అనుకున్నట్టుగా అచీవ్ అవుతుందా కాదా, అది కూడా ఒక ఛాలెంజ్. సో ఇవన్నీ మేజర్ గా ఛాలెంజెస్ ఇన్ ఇండియా జపాన్ రిలేషన్స్. సో ఇంతకు ముందు చెప్పినట్టు వే ఫార్వర్డ్ ఏంటి మరి దీనికి, నెక్స్ట్ కంక్లూజన్ పార్ట్ లో కానీ ఫ్యూచరిస్టిక్ పర్స్పెక్టివ్ లో ఏంటి. ఫస్ట్ థింగ్ ఏంటి అంటే, మిగతా అన్ని ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ లో కన్నా ఇండియా జపాన్ లో డిఫెన్స్ చాలా వెనుకబడి ఉంది. సో డిఫెన్స్ కి ఒక మంచి పుష్ ఇవ్వాలి. అంటే డిఫెన్స్ లో చేసిన అగ్రిమెంట్స్ కానీ అవన్నీ రియలైజ్ అవ్వాలి. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ మనం యుఎస్ తో లెమోవా సైన్ చేసినాం, అదే లాజిస్టిక్స్ అగ్రిమెంట్. కానీ జపాన్ తో మాత్రం ఇప్పటికీ కూడా ఆక్సా అనే అగ్రిమెంట్ నెగోషియేషన్ లోనే ఉంది. ఎందుకు అట్లా? సో అలాగే ఏ ఎయిర్ క్రాఫ్ట్ కూడా డిస్కషన్ లోనే ఉంది, ఆంఫిబియస్ ఎయిర్ క్రాఫ్ట్, అది కూడా ఇంకా ప్రోగ్రెస్ అవ్వలేదు. సో దాని మీద కూడా వర్క్ చేయాలి. సో ఇవన్నీ కొంచెం పుష్ చేస్తేనే ప్రొడక్టివ్నెస్ అనేది రిలేషన్షిప్ లో ఇంకా ఇంప్రూవ్ అవుతుంది. అలాగే మనం చూస్తే జపనీస్ కొన్ని ఆబ్జెక్టివ్స్ ఉన్నాయి, ఇండియన్ ఆబ్జెక్టివ్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఈ రెండింటిని మనం సింక్రనైజ్ చేస్తే రిలేషన్షిప్ ఇంకా పాజిటివ్ డొమైన్ లోకి తీసుకెళ్లొచ్చు. దానికి ఒక ఎగ్జాంపుల్, ఇప్పుడు మన COVID-19 తర్వాత జపాన్ మెయిన్ గా సప్లై చైన్ డిస్ట్రప్షన్ అవుతుందని చెప్పి కొన్ని కంపెనీస్ ని జపాన్ చైనా నుండి బయటికి తీసి వేరే కంట్రీస్ లో లేదా జపాన్ లో ఏర్పాటు చేయాలని అనుకుంటుంది. సో ఇలాంటప్పుడు ఇండియాలో ఆల్రెడీ మేడ్ ఇన్ ఇండియా ప్లాన్ అని ఉంది. దాంట్లో ఏం చేస్తున్నాం మనం, మేక్ ఇన్ ఇండియాలో ఫారెన్ కంపెనీస్ అన్నిటిని ఇన్వైట్ చేస్తున్నాం. సో అప్పుడు మనం ఈ మేక్ ఇన్ ఇండియాని, జపాన్ ప్లాన్ ని రెండింటిని సింక్రనైజ్ చేస్తే ఆ కంపెనీస్ అన్నిటిని ఇండియాలో ఇన్వెస్ట్ చేసేలా చేయొచ్చు. సో అది ఇద్దరికి లాభం. సో ఇది వన్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ఫ్యూచరిస్టిక్ కంక్లూజన్. ఇవి రెండు కాకుండా ఇంతకుముందు ఛాలెంజ్ లో చెప్పాను, ఏషియా ఆఫ్రికా గ్రోత్ కారిడార్ కానీ కనెక్టివిటీలో ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ అన్ని టైం లైన్ లో అనుకున్నట్టుగా ఆబ్జెక్టివ్స్ పెట్టుకున్నట్టుగా రియలైజ్ అవ్వట్లేదు. సో వాటి మీద కూడా ఇంకా ఎక్కువ వర్క్ చేయాలి. అలా వర్క్ చేస్తూ గ్లోబల్ పార్ట్నర్షిప్ అనేది రియల్ గా ఎస్టాబ్లిష్ చేయొచ్చు. సో దిస్ ఈస్ ఆన్ ఎ హోల్ summary of India-Japan relations. Okay, so I'll just the different aspects. So you can see the historical context first, like how it developed in a frame, and then we have this economic angle. I told you, apart from trade, Japan is heavily invested in India, at least in investment. So investment is a kind of positive story. Uh, and then discussed about rupee dollar swap agreement, which we recently signed, and it is a bit important from prelims also. And then we have seen different corridors or different projects where Japan is specifically working on. And then connectivity issue and strategic relations. And finally, we discussed political relations and G4 issue and defense relations, and then challenges and way forward. So that is for India-Japan relations. So with this, all the major power relations have been covered. So I told you when I started this international class that first we will discuss separated this IR syllabus into three components. One is major power, and next is neighborhood, and third is institutions. So major powers is completed because these are the major powers with which we are having relations. And now, before explaining West Asia or Pakistan and Afghanistan or India's relations with Saudi, Israel, and Iran, there is a need to understand Cold War also. And ma'am also has specifically suggested me to explain you all Cold War basics. So today we'll discuss this Cold War angle. And then after that, if time permits, we'll also discuss India's relations with West Asia. And from Monday, either we'll have that interactive class about the preparation strategy and all, or else we'll discuss the neighborhood relations. Okay. So before I start Cold War, just try to have or try to think about these questions. Some of you might have already thought about this. The first thing is, have you seen ever about this North Korea and South Korea, how they are? How North Korea and South Korea? I'll show you in one map. Have you seen this map, North Korea and South Korea? Actually, do you know that North Korea and South Korea earlier used to be only one country? It is only after World War II and because of Cold War, they have been divided into North Korea and South Korea. You can see here, this is South Korea because it is on southern side of Korea, and you can see North Korea on northern side. And Pyongyang is the capital city of North Korea, and Seoul, here it is capital city of South Korea. And the issues which we are dealing in the present world, like we always see US dealing about nuclear issues with North Korea, like Kim Jong-un is there. Trump is having summits with him to make sure that North Korea gives up nuclear weapons, and North Korea is having disputes with South Korea, or North Korea is having disputes with Japan. So we read this news every day. And have you ever wondered why this relation is this in this way? And also there is one interesting fact: North Korea and South Korea are technically still at war. Technically, not on the ground, but they're technically still at war. There is no final peace agreement that is signed between North Korea and South Korea, because during the Cold War they both fought on opposite sides, and finally they have agreed an armistice. Armistice is a temporary arrangement. Armistice is a temporary arrangement, and peace treaty is a permanent arrangement. So that armistice is still holding ground even now. So that is about North Korea and South Korea. So I'm trying to generate some questions, and then we'll link the current politics or current problems with the Cold War. Similarly, every other day in Hindu, you will see about the news about Taliban and how Taliban and US are making a peace deal and how it impacts India. And India is worried about this Taliban coming to power. But have you ever wondered why this Taliban is there? Why there is always instability in Afghanistan? Why there are terror attacks in Afghanistan? Again, the answer lies in Cold War, because it is an impact of Cold War between US and USSR. Similarly, this is an interview question actually. An interview panel member asked one of my friend, like, you see this, uh, what we say, like, dichotomy, because on one hand, Middle East, when we say Middle East is the West Asia. Okay, so entire West Asia, if you see all the Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, Iraq, or and Lebanon, or even Oman, Yemen. So all these countries, if you see, those are the most resource rich regions. That means they have huge crude oil reserves, so they have huge fossil fuel reserves, and they have huge money. But despite that, from last 70 years, there is always a conflict in Middle East. Always there are, I mean, they are the most poorest regions, and those are the regions where they don't have democracy and all. So why this happens? So despite having such uh, resources and such wealth, why there are deep conflicts in Middle East? I'm not saying it is only because of Cold War, but one of the important reason is because of Cold War. So for all of the three questions that are there in the current context, the answer lies in knowing more about Cold War. So there are many ways to learn about Cold War. Cold War is like, even if I start talking from now, even if we discuss for 4 5 hours also, it will not complete. It is that depth. So I've segregated this under four headings. That is, first of all, what is Cold War? Okay, and then why Cold War? What are the causes? Why means why this Cold War happened, and then how Cold War played out. That means what are the significant uh, things that are happened during the Cold War, and then what are the impacts of Cold War. Okay, so under this we'll discuss from now about the Cold War. So try to have these kind of questions yourself also whenever you study, like why there is conflict in Syria, why the US is involved on one side, why the other countries are involved in other side. So whenever there an issue that comes in Hindu, try to know more about it in the background. Then you will be able to connect more about Cold War and other historical events. An interesting thing about Cold War is also that it it covers your world history also, at least from 1945 to 1990. So this is the time of Cold War. Okay, so we'll come to Cold War. So first of all, what is Cold War? And the word Cold War itself explains much about this war. When we say normally a war is a conflict. That means two armies or two nations will fight. For example, World War One, World War Two, or Indo-Pakistan War during 1947 or 1971. These are the wars, because both armies are fighting and someone will win at the end. So these are the direct confrontations. But what is Cold War? Cold War means they will fight. Even here also, nations will fight. But instead of fighting directly, they will fight indirectly. So this indirect way of fighting is called Cold War. So it is very important here. Okay, once again, Cold War means indirect way of fighting, not the direct confrontation. Okay, so here you can see that example. Like I will tell you, for example, you are saying your enemy is, uh, from Pakistan. We'll see. Pakistan is a country and India is a country. For Pakistan, India is enemy. So you can either directly fight it on the border, okay, or you can fight it in a cold way, in a Cold War form. What is that Cold War form? Instead of fighting directly India, you'll fight India in, or India's interests in Afghanistan. So this is a kind of Cold War. So what you'll do, you'll try to uh, propagate negative image about India in Afghanistan. So that way you'll try to win Taliban into your side. So this is a kind of Cold War. So similar to this, US at that time, United States of America, and United Soviet Socialist Republic of Russia. Okay, USSR and US, both are superpowers after World War II. So both are on opposite sides, and both never fought each other directly because they are very distant. and there are also other reasons. But instead, they have fought in other proxy wars, or they engaged in propaganda, or they engaged in ideological confrontation, or they engaged in arms race. So these are the kind of cold ways through which they fought. So this is nothing but Cold War. So here you can see the words also. Like Cold War indicates constant strife, conflict, suspicion, mistrust, hostility. So all these words indicate a kind of inimical relation. That means you want to have an enemy kind of relation with the other party, but you don't want to engage them directly. So how will you do it? You will do it through indirect ways. So what are those indirect ways? One is ideological. This plays in ideological way. So what is the ideology between US and USSR? So the first ideology war is between capitalism and communism. From ideological angle, it is between capitalism and communism. So what capitalism propagates? Capitalism says free market. That means private companies should be allowed. Individuals should establish or should be free to purchase private property and all. Whereas communism says entire state should have the entire control on industries or wealth, and it should distribute that wealth to individuals. So there is no freedom for individual to establish the private enterprises, or mainly it is under control of government. So these are kind of opposite ideologies. So this is kind of soft cold play of ideological conflict. So that is one angle. And then similarly, this Cold War played mainly in military and national security issues. Why it played military and national security? Because there is ideological angle involved. Each party felt that the other country might spread this ideology to their own country or to their neighborhood, and finally they'll convert their country also to that ideology. For example, Soviet Russia feared that America will slowly spread capitalism to its neighborhood, its neighbor, and also slowly convert Soviet Russia to capitalist country. Similarly, America also feared that Russia will spread this communism to all the neighbors like Europe, all the UK and all, and finally it will convert US as well. So because of this suspicion, they have divided world into two blocks. Those are East Bloc and West Bloc. So East Bloc, that is eastern part of the world, are majorly under communism influence. Okay, are majorly under communism influence, and it is led by Soviet Russia. The West Bloc majorly Western European countries and North America. North America is US, Canada, and Mexico. So US, Canada, Mexico, all these parts are majorly under capitalism led by US. So this is the Cold War that played between US and USSR. So I hope now you understood what is Cold War. Cold War is having confrontation but not directly, having that in a indirect way. So that is simply about Cold War. Now we'll see why this Cold War first came in. So I'm just showing you here the main countries divided between the blocks. So you can see the dark blue color. Okay, dark blue color countries are mainly capitalist countries led by US, and they are part of NATO. NATO also I will explain. It is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, it is a security organization under US or led by US against Russia or against Soviet Union. So these dark blue countries are strongly under US bloc or West bloc, and this red countries you can see, right, red and near pink. So China also once used to be Soviet bloc country, but slowly it proposed its own strategy after some years. So that is why it is under pink. So the main red part, this is not entirely Russia. Okay, only till here, only some part of the western part is USSR, but it still expanded its influence to Poland and other countries, Poland, Hungary, and similarly there were other countries here, Lithuania at that time, Finland. At that time, these were all part of Eastern Bloc, and there were these white blocks. that are non-aligned countries. That means they're not aligned on either East Bloc or West Bloc. So this is to show you on graphically. Okay. Now, why Cold War? So the first root cause of Cold War happened when there was a revolution in Russia. So you all know that in 1917 there's a huge revolution that happened in Russia called Bolshevik Revolution. So after that revolution, Russia became Soviet Union became communist country, and they have established a communist ideology and started ruling government based on communism. So from there, this kind of uh, enemy or animosity developed between US and Russia. US and UK, British Empire, at that time itself tried to suppress this revolution, but they failed. And even they didn't recognize Russia at that time. But it didn't play out much in the international arena because Russia is not that superpower or great power to challenge US or British at that time. So this is during 1917. So from 1917 till 1945, there is another event that happened and that occupied the world. That is rise of Germany. Rise of Germany from 1917 to 1945. Because of Germany under Hitler, they proposed an ideology called Nazism. Nazism, okay? You don't need to know about this, but remember that from 1920 to 1945, Germany was under Hitler under principles called Nazism. So this Nazism is threat to both Russia and also to UK and even USA. So because of that, Russia and US both came together and fought Germany. And finally, they won after 1945. You all know this is nothing but World War II. In World War II, Russia, that is Soviet Russia, UK, that is British Empire, US, United States of America, and France. All these are called Allied powers. So they came together and defeated Hitler or Germany and finally won the World War II. So till here it is fine. So once that war is won, after that war, primarily there are two major powers. British actually weakened, and British India got independence from British. So much of their wealth and influence was removed. So British is no more nothing more than a small island. So British power was eliminated. So removing British and France, there are the two countries which are dominating. Those are US and Russia. Because Russia expanded its territory from that war from west to almost east of Berlin. That means even 1/3 of Germany was also under control of uh, USSR. So you can see till here, till I'll show you the arrow mark. So till here, till Germany, it was completely under Russia. So from there, both have started trying to influence other countries which are remaining. So that's how World War II started. Okay. And also, when there are two countries, obviously there will be a power vacuum. Before that, British used to be the only superpower. So that is why there was no such kind of Cold War. But when US and USSR both are superpowers, there is automatically a power vacuum that was there. To fill that, these two countries came to dominate, and that domination period is called Cold War. Okay. And then I told you ideological incompatibilities. As I told, capitalism proposes different thing and communism proposes a different thing. For example, if we see from economic angle, what capitalist model proposes? Capitalist model encourages private individuals and private firms and encourages profit, whereas socialist model or communist model encourages planned economy, that is having 5-year plans, developing a region, and having state an important role. So because of this opposite nature, also this Cold War has come into play because they want their socialist model to be followed in entire world. Similarly, US wants capitalist model to be followed in entire world. So these are the causes of Cold War. Now we will see from 1945 how this Cold War played out till 1990. So how it played out. So I'll explain this playing out with respect to regions. First we'll take Europe, then we'll take Asia, and then we'll see how it played out in Middle East, and then how we'll see in Latin America. Because it one way of studying this is years wise, other way is studying regions wise. Studying regions wise is very important for us to understand the present day conflicts. So that is why I try to make it in region wise. So if you see region wise, first thing is Europe. So in Europe, what happened is after immediately World War II, all the countries have been damaged. So very severely they got damaged. So only two countries can help them. That is, one is US and other is Soviet Russia. So what US did is US proposed a plan called Marshall Plan. You don't need to remember this. US President slowly provided dollars to Europe to recover from the damage. That way, they want to extend their influence to Europe. Similarly, Russia feared that if US extends its influence, tomorrow all these countries will go into US alliance and will compete against the Soviet Union. So that is why Soviet Union also proposed an opposite economic plan called Molotov Plan. Okay, Molotov Plan is proposed by USSR. Marshall Plan is proposed by US. So this is the first step in Cold War. So once they proposed the plan, each of each party was suspicious of other party, and then finally this Germany was defeated, right? And this Germany was divided between West and East, that is between US and its friends, and Russia, Soviet Russia, and its colonies. Okay, so similarly when Germany was divided, West Berlin, that is Berlin, also divided into two halves. West Berlin went to US, East Berlin was under Soviet Russia. Because both were treating each other as enemy, they started blockading movement between West Berlin and East Berlin. Okay, and then came security arrangements. That means they want all of us came together forming an security organization, like all these Western countries, for example France, Germany, and Western Germany, US, all came under a organization called NATO. This is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So according to this organization, if any country attacks any one country of this entire group, all will together fight that enemy. So because they were suspicious of Soviet Russia expanding to these countries, so they formed NATO. So when NATO is formed, Russia formed another opposite organization called Warsaw Pact. Okay, Warsaw Pact. So this is how Russia and US both were playing in different fields. One is security, second is economic, and similarly ideology. One of the peak development of this period is they constructed almost a wall between West Berlin and East Berlin. That is called Berlin Wall. You can understand the animosity between the countries. Okay, they don't want one country or one part of territory citizens to even cross to other side. Can you imagine, like right now there is a free movement of people and to everywhere, even to North Korea also you can go, until unless you don't do any uh, activities that threaten their regime. But at that time, East Berliners can't go to West Berlin, West Berliners can't go to East Berlin. So to do that, they have put a wall in 1961. Until Soviet Union collapsed, that is till 1989, that wall was there. So that is the kind of enemy or inimical relation was there between US and USSR. So that is how it played out in Europe. So I'll show you which countries are part of USSR and which countries are part of US now. So here you can see this is Soviet Union, okay, and this Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and this is East Germany, I was saying, and Berlin was also part of East Germany. So this entire red color portion was under communist bloc, that is East bloc, under Soviet Russia, and this entire West bloc is under US. So this way world was divided in Europe. So this is how it played out in Europe. Now we'll see in other areas. Now Asia Pacific. In Asia Pacific, the first theater where it played out is Korea. And the interesting thing about this Cold War is that this United Soviet Union and US never directly fought. Instead, wherever there is a third world country or wherever there is a new independent country, there they try to acquire influence. So in process of acquiring influence, both tried to compete, and both even went for armed conflicts, but indirectly. That means they'll supply arms, they'll supply weapons, and they'll supply even soldiers also, but they'll not announce direct support to those countries. So that way, from north side, China and Soviet Russia, I'll first explain this how it played out here. So in 1945, you all know World War II happened, and in that Japan has occupied all these countries in Asia. So finally, Japan was defeated by US. So when Japan was defeated, Japan used to occupy this Korea. So now Japan got defeated, so Japan went away. So now who should rule Korea? So that is a question that came up, and obviously there was again competition between US and Soviet Union. Already Soviet Union soldiers were there in the north side, I mean at least few miles of south of China, and in the south there were similarly some soldiers of US, and now they want democracy. I mean US wants to establish democracy here, western kind of democracy in entire Korea, and Soviet Russia wants communist country to be established in Korea. Now started conflict. So China and Soviet both are communist countries, so they don't want a democracy in their neighborhood. So what they did, they supplied arms and ammunition. Similarly on the southern side, US supplied arms and money and everything, so they both fought. Finally they fought, I mean both tried to extend their influence, and finally they stopped at somewhere this point called 38th parallel. Okay, that is this division is called 38th parallel. So this is where finally they fought between 1950 to 1953. And in 1953, finally, they realized that nobody can run complete Korea. So they said, okay, fine, we'll go to peace by dividing Korea into half. And they made it half. So South Korea became Western liberal democracy, North Korea became communist country. So much so communism that even it is more authoritarian than Russia and China. So that is now the stage of North Korea. So that is how this conflict played out. Okay. So this is about Korean crisis. So you can see, and everyone predicted that World War III will come because of Korean crisis. But fortunately, by 1953, both sides realized that better to stop at this and divide between two. So that is how they stopped. Next thing, Vietnam War. So now Korea is done. Okay, now they want new ground to play because they don't want to attack their own countries. So what is the new ground? Again, Vietnam. This is Vietnam. Again, Vietnam also has an interesting story. Okay, like how British ruled India, France ruled Vietnam at that time. I mean, before World War II. But during World War II, Japan was most powerful country in Asia Pacific, and Japan occupied even Vietnam and pushed France out of Vietnam. So that was fine. But after World War, you all know, US defeated Japan. So now again, they want to see who should rule Vietnam. So France says, because we are earlier colonial country, we should rule. And Vietnamese says, we should rule by our own selves. Okay. And those main leader is Ho Chi Minh. He is a communist. So obviously China support him. Okay. And US is supporting France because France is democracy and France is ally of US. So again war started between communist ideology and capitalist ideology. So South was influenced by US and France, and there was a kind of Southern Vietnam government. Similarly in the North, Ho Chi Minh was led by communist movements. Arms and money was supplied by China and Soviet Russia. But here also same principle. China doesn't want democracy at its neighborhood because if there is a democracy, tomorrow it will be a threat to China. From China, it will be a threat to Russia. So this is a kind of Cold War. From 1950 to 1975, you can imagine like 20 years there was a constant conflict in Vietnam, and that is one of the largest conflict. Now only other conflict that is comparable to Vietnam is Afghanistan. Okay, Afghanistan is from 1982 even now, like 40 more than 40 years. So before that, Vietnam conflict was that famous. So Vietnam War played between again communist countries and USSR. So this is in Asia region. One is Vietnam, another is South Korea and North Korea. Now we'll come to Middle East. So Middle East also, every other day we see some problem with Israel and Palestine. Someone will throw some terrorist accident, or Israeli defense forces will shoot. And this problem also has its root in Cold War. Again, after World War II, this entire Palestine region was under British control. So this British, what they did is they made an accord. Under that, which was an Palestine territory, they allowed all the Jewish people from Europe to come back to Palestine and establish a state called Israel within Palestine. Okay, because Jews never had a state, never had a country, but they were severely persecuted under Nazi Germany. So Hitler had actually tried to kill all the Jews in Germany and Europe. So because of that, there was a strong sentiment generated in Allied powers and in the world to actually protect Jews. So they gave, especially British gave concessions to Jews to go back to Israel and establish their own state. And Britishers, okay, they believed that Israel and Palestine both can work together, but their religions and how US and USSR played, because of that, Muslims, Palestinians are mainly Muslims, okay? Arab states. Arab states have significant influence on Palestine. So Muslims and Jews both had problem because Palestinians don't want to share their nation with another country, or they don't want to give their territory. And Israel wants their own country because they have seen, because they don't have a territory, all other atrocities have been committed, like Hitler killing all the Jews, and they have to migrate to many countries. So they said they want their own state. Okay, till here it is fine. But after World War II, State of Israel got established in 1948 or 1949. From there again, Cold War played out. Now US is heavily uh, subsidizing or heavily encouraging Israel. Okay, because US wants and base in Middle East, and USSR, Soviet Russia also wants some influence. So it started supporting some Arab countries which are against Israel. So, for example, Soviet Russia started supporting Egypt, and Egypt was at that time very powerful country in that area. I'll show you the map here. You can see here Egypt, right? So Egypt was very powerful because it has both agriculture and oil reserves also. And this is entirely Sinai Peninsula. Okay, this triangular shape. This importance of Sinai Peninsula is this one. This triangular shape is Sinai Peninsula. This Sinai Peninsula connects Africa. This is Africa, Egypt and rest of things. This is Africa, and this is Asia or Middle East. So Sinai Peninsula only is the geographical region that connects Africa and Middle East or Asia. Okay, so that is why this region is very important. So this entire territory is under Egypt, and this is Palestine at that time, and the small part, this part is Israel. So Egypt always want to dominate this entire region and want to give rights to more to Palestine. So now Egypt, as US is supporting Israel, Soviet Russia is supporting Egypt. So started wars. So first war came between Israel and Arab nations, and finally a line was agreed. Okay, that was fine. And then a Suez crisis erupted. Again, Suez Canal. Suez Canal is a canal that connects Mediterranean Ocean. Okay, Mediterranean Sea. This is Mediterranean Sea, and this is Red Sea. Okay, and here there is a small canal. Now here it is completely seen as a landmass, but there is a small canal. You can see my mouse pointer, right? So there used to be a canal here. Even now also it is there. That canal is Suez Canal, and this is very important for trade. Even for Britishers to connect to India, those ships will go through here. So here again conflict started. Soviet Russia was supporting Egypt, and United States and British Empire were controlling this Suez Canal, and Egypt wants to control this canal because revenues from canal is very important. So what happened? Israel, France, and British were on one side. Soviet Russia, Egypt were on other side, and both fought again in Suez Canal. Okay, and Israel won some part, that is the Sinai Peninsula. was completely occupied by Israel, but overall, Egypt won the Suez Canal. So this is kind of mixed victory. Again, further wars came in 1967 and in 1973. Again, similar thing. Soviet Russia supported opposite parties, that is Arab parties, and the rest of US and West supported Israel. So that is why this Israel-Palestine conflict again and again enraged. And similarly, this is Israel-Palestine. Okay. Now we'll see in other areas also how it played out. So you can see this orange shaded regions, right? So these are kind of regions that are controlled by Soviet Russia. That means they have huge influence. Okay. Iran before 1960 used to have huge influence of Soviet Russia. But after that, Iran went into US influence. But Syria even now you see there is Syrian crisis and there is Syrian president called uh, Al-Assad, okay? And Al-Assad is a main ruler. Who is supporting him? Russia. And Russia is nothing but Soviet Union earlier used to support Syria. So that is how it has bases and influence in Syria. So that way also, and this entire Saudi, UAE, Yemen used to be controlled by US, including Israel. So that is how this conflict made. And every time whenever there is a small conflict, each party tried to interfere on their client countries, and that conflict became even more worse. So that is how even now we see all these conflicts in Iraq and Iran, and between Iran and Saudi, and also between Syria and Israel, and Lebanon and Syria, or Lebanon and Israel. So all these conflicts have root in Cold War. So this is how Cold War also played out in Middle East. Now we'll see in Latin America. Okay, so now we have seen Asia, Europe, Middle East, and now Latin America. So Latin America is nothing but Central America, that is below Mexico. Every country below Mexico falls under Latin America. So all the Mexico, Central American countries, and Brazil, this Ecuador, and Argentina, Peru, Chile, all these countries fall under Latin America. So there also both these countries, US and Soviet Russia, fought for influence. So if you see Cuba, Cuba is very important. Cuba is even now a strong communist country that even now fights US. Even though it is very small, you can see this is Cuba, and this Cuba is very near to US, and this tail-like structure is there, right? This is Florida state of US. So you can see it is that close. That means it is like Sri Lanka of India. If US is India, this Cuba is Sri Lanka. And now you imagine India is country and China has complete influence on Sri Lanka. How will India react? It will also react very violently. So that is what precisely happened in Cuban Missile Crisis. So what happened is by 1950, both US and Soviet Russia had nuclear bombs. Okay, and Cuba was trying to gain independence, and there was communist revolutions going on. What US did is US feared that if a communist government gets established in Cuba, it will be a threat for US. So that is why it tried to overtake it by using force or supplying other party. But unfortunately, this communist won. Okay, communist under there was a famous struggle. You all know this Che Guevara and all, right? Fidel Castro, Che Guevara. So those are all Cuban leaders, Cuban communist leaders. And finally, that revolution won, and they have established the government. Because US was supporting other party and trying to suppress these leaders, they have developed an inimical relation with US. So who is enemy to US? Russia. So they took the support of Soviet Russia. What they thought is they are very small country, they can't defend against superpower like US. So what they can do, all they can do is they can get the nuclear missiles of Russia to be installed on Cuba, so that US will never use force, US will never use its army to occupy Cuba. So Russia said, Russia is so much happy because this country is very close to US, and if nuclear missiles of Russia is there in Cuba, that's it, US will always be can be blackmailed. So Russia started exporting nuclear missiles to here, and US came to know this, and US said, "Okay, if you don't remove, we'll go for nuclear attack." So this movement is called Cuban Missile Crisis. This is also very important. So at that time, almost US and USSR were about to bomb each other through nuclear bombs. But somehow they realized that if a nuclear war starts, nor US nor neither Russia, both cannot win, both will be destroyed. So it will not be useful to fight directly. So they realized, okay, we will stop and we'll solve this issue by going for a peaceful resolution. And finally, they resolved it. Like US said, okay, we'll not intervene in Cuba, and Russia said we'll not put missiles. So that is how it got de-escalated. So this is how it played in Latin America. So in Latin America also, similarly in other countries like Venezuela or in Costa Rica and all, similarly US tried to influence one party, Soviet Russia used to influence other parties. So that is how it played out in Latin America as well. So these are three areas. I'll just explain. Okay, this is about till here how it played out. Now I'll explain very briefly in Telugu for 5 minutes. Or let's do one thing. We'll complete the Cold War here first in English, and then I'll explain the summary in Telugu. So till here it is complete, right? So now I said after all, Cold War is not Cold War, not all cold. That means there is some kind of cooperation also between Soviet Russia and US. That means they didn't fight always. They also cooperated. Why? The major aspect is nuclear bombs. They realized that nobody can win the war if they fight directly. That is why it went into actually cold form. That is why they fought in the third world countries. So some of the aspects of cooperation is, you all know this outer space treaty, right? Outer space treaty. That means nobody can put weapons in outer space or satellites or moon. So that is treaty even present now. That treaty was actually signed during the Cold War. So that explains you the cooperation angle also. So they feared that if both US and USSR both try to put weapons in space, that will also be destructive for both. So that is why they cooperated. Similarly, nuclear non-proliferation treaty. That means according to this treaty, no other country should possess the weapons. Okay. So that is why they signed this treaty, because they want to have their own domination. So these kind of treaties, these kind of cooperations, these are some example. This Camp David Accords is peace agreement between Israel and Palestine. However, it didn't succeed, but these are peace agreement between Israel and Palestine. These are also tried with the help of US and Soviet Russia. So it is not always fighting. That is what I want to say. There are periods of cooperation also, but largely there was fighting in indirect way. So this is about Cold War. Finally, what is the impact of Cold War? Now we have seen why Cold War came, what happened, how it played. Now what is the impact? So the primary impact is, neither it didn't impact heavily Russia, Soviet Union or US, but it impacted mainly third world countries. What are these third world countries? These are the new developing countries, new countries that gained independence. If you see Korea, Korea was such a beautiful country. I mean, that used to be one whole country. Because of Cold War, it got divided and was completely in conflict till now. So its impact, Cold War impact, is more felt in third world countries. Similarly, if you see Afghanistan, this entire jihadi problem, this entire Taliban problem is because of Cold War. But who is bearing this effect? It is Afghanistan people. It is Indians, because of certain Taliban elements in Indian Jammu and Kashmir also. So third world is having more impact because of Cold War, because of certain actions of first world. Similarly, if you see during the Cold War, there was no development discourse. Nobody wants to do development. All they want to do is develop more and more weapons. If one has missile, they want to build bigger missile than that. For example, Russia sent a dog to space. Immediately US launched rockets sending humans after that, humans to moon. There is no benefit in sending human to moon other than showing that we are the space leader. So this is how war, I mean, kind of technology war or kind of defense war happened. So all the development expenditure is converted into acquiring arms and ammunition, because every country felt threat from other country. Example, you see Vietnam from 1950 to 1975, 25 years a developing country was at war. So what can it develop? Like 20 years was lost in just acquiring arms and fighting. So this is kind of impact. Similarly, temporary arrangements became permanent. What do we mean by? armistice that was signed between North and South Korea was supposed to be a temporary solution. They said we will put elections and whoever win, we will unify the country and they will rule the entire country. But even to till date, that border is as it is. So temporary arrangements became permanent. And you all see coups in Middle East. All these coups, one organization will come or one leader will be elected, and then a military coup will come and overthrow him because of foreign influence. So these problems also have root in Cold War. And finally, all the problems right now we have in geopolitics have their roots in Cold War games. So that is about Cold War. Now these are some of the questions to yourself. Ask yourself. So earlier I said Cold War is between Soviet Russia and US. So now they are saying there is a new Cold War coming up between US and China. So is it right to call that as a new Cold War or not? Or whether it is same way how it is used to be in earlier form or not. So try to think about it. We'll see if time permits, we'll answer them. These are India, West Asia. So this is all about Cold War. Okay. uh, this is 8:13 already, so I hope I'll not be able to summarize this in Telugu right now. We'll do one thing tomorrow very quickly. For the first 10 minutes I'll explain this entire Cold War concept in Telugu first, and then we'll go with neighborhood relations. But I hope most of you have got the concept right. What is Cold War, like how the current conflicts like Afghanistan, like Israel, all these conflicts have roots in Cold War. So one thing, even if you don't, one thing, Cold War is not direct confrontation, not armed confrontation. It is a kind of indirect way or fighting through proxies. So this is mainly Cold War.